films that scare you. And then there are films that leave a scar. Neil Marshall's 2005 masterpiece, The Descent, is the second kind. It's a film you don't just watch, you endure it. It plunges you into a primal state of fear, exploiting not just our terror of monsters, but our more fundamental dread of the dark, of tight spaces, of being utterly, hopelessly trapped. The director himself discovered that the fear of claustrophobia is more potent than any creature he could design. A phobia that affects not 3 out of 10 people as he initially thought, but a staggering 9 out of 10.
In this movie, it's so interesting the way these characters look. In many ways, the antagonist is light, the cave, darkness. What was the thought process of creating these monsters?
The film is a masterclass in tension, a perfect engine of terror.
Well, the process with these ones was to actually just simplify them as much as possible. Yeah. And the whole concept of the crawlers was that they were the cavemen who stayed in the cave.
But the horror you see on screen is a carefully constructed fiction. The true story, the one that unfolded behind the camera, is far more disturbing. It's a story of real pain, of calculated psychological games, and of a chilling collision with reality that no one could have predicted. The film is called The Descent, but the title doesn't just apply to the characters. It describes the grueling journey the cast was forced to take, and the one we are about to begin now, a descent into the horrifying facts that crawl just beneath the surface of the film.
Dead animals. Hundreds of them.
This is not good, guys.
We get out of here. Which way?
Come on.
10. The Ghost in the Machine. A true story, hoax. The countdown begins with a lie. A lie so potent it speaks to a terrifying truth about the film's power. Shortly after the movie's release, a legend began to circulate. A chilling rumor that The Descent wasn't entirely fiction. This myth was cemented by a book written by author Kate Probert, which claimed to be a non-fiction investigation into the real caving expedition that inspired the film. The book's premise is the stuff of found footage horror. The author claims to have received an anonymous package from a survivor of the actual event, containing a diary kept inside the doomed cave system. The story was a hoax, a clever framing device for a critical analysis of the film. But the question is, why did so many want to believe it? The film's realism is so suffocating, its portrayal of terror so visceral that it creates a psychological vacuum. It feels so real that audiences developed a subconscious need for it to be real. The film so perfectly simulates a descent into hell that it inspired its own dark folklore, a ghost story that tried to turn a movie back into the documentary it felt like. The horror here isn't the lie, it's the unsettling proof of how deeply the film's fiction burrowed into our reality.
There's no breeze! It could be any one of these tunnels! Take your pick!
Oh, fuck it! Hello! Please! Is there anybody there?
9. The Poster Pulled from Hell. Sometimes the barrier between fictional horror and real-world tragedy collapses without warning. In July of 2005, the marketing campaign for The Descent was in full swing across the United Kingdom. Posters were plastered throughout London's public transport system, including deep within the underground tunnels. The imagery was designed for maximum impact. A terrified woman, trapped and screaming, with taglines promising outright terror. Then on July 7th, life didn't just imitate art, it produced a horror far greater than any film. A series of coordinated terrorist bombings struck the city. Bombs were detonated on 3 separate underground trains, deep beneath the streets, and on a double-decker bus. The city was plunged into chaos and grief. Suddenly, the film's posters were no longer advertisements. They were horrific, accidental monuments to a real, ongoing tragedy. The image of a person screaming in a tunnel was no longer entertainment. It was the lived experience of hundreds of Londoners. The film's distributor, Pathé, was forced to pull the entire campaign immediately. They recalled the posters from the underground and frantically reworked the ads, removing the now unbearable word terror. Director Neil Marshall later confirmed the event devastated the film's box office. As he put it, People were still trapped underground in reality, so no one really wanted to go see a film about people trapped underground. The abstract fear the movie was selling had become a concrete national trauma, a grim reminder that the horrors we pay to watch for 90 minutes are, for some, an inescapable reality.
At least 37 people have been killed in a series of explosions in London, the worst terrorist attack the capital has ever seen.
8. The Ancestors in the Dark. The monsters in The Descent, known as the Crawlers, are not aliens or demons. Their origin is far more disturbing. Director Neil Marshall's concept was chillingly simple. They are cavemen who didn't leave the cave. They are a branch of the human family tree that never stepped into the sunlight, a divergent species that evolved in absolute darkness over thousands of years. This idea isn't pure fantasy. It taps into a deep ancestral memory. For hundreds of thousands of years, our own ancestors, Homo sapiens, were cave dwellers, living in the very darkness the film depicts. Perhaps that's why cultures all over the world, separated by oceans and centuries, have independently created myths of pale, humanoid creatures lurking underground. In the minds of Wales, they were called knockers, the spirits of dead miners. In Nordic folklore, they were trolls, giants who would turn to stone if they ever touched the sunlight. In modern internet lore, they have a new name: pale crawlers. Eyewitness accounts and viral creepypasta stories describe gaunt, hairless, white-skinned humanoids that move with an unnerving, insect-like speed. A description that perfectly matches the creatures in the film. The Descent didn't invent a monster. It gave a face and a name to a fear that has been encoded in our stories and perhaps our DNA for millennia. The terror of the Crawlers is the terror of meeting our own reflection, a feral, regressed version of humanity that we left behind in the dark. 7. The ending that was too bleak for America. A film's ending defines its message. For The Descent, that message was so relentlessly bleak that it had to be changed for American audiences. In the version released in the United States, our hero Sarah miraculously escapes the cave. She drives away in a panic, gets one final jump scare from a vision of the dead Juno, and the credits roll. It's a brutal, traumatizing victory, but it is a victory. She survives. That is a lie. In the original UK cut, the story continues. After the jump scare in the car, Sarah jolts awake. She never escaped. The frantic drive to freedom was nothing more than the final desperate hallucination of a dying mind. She is still deep within the earth, alone. As the sounds of the crawlers grow louder, she looks up and sees a vision of her deceased daughter, holding a birthday cake, smiling at her. Sarah smiles back, a look of peaceful resignation on her face as the darkness and the monsters finally consume her. The director, Neil Marshall, considers this the one and only true ending. He was blunt about his reasoning, stating, "To my mind, there's no happiness for Sarah outside that cave. Her family's dead, her friends are gone, she's completely insane." The best version of it was Sarah being in her head anyway, back with her daughter. So that's the only ending there is as far as I'm concerned. The film's true horror was never about physical survival. It was about the complete and total annihilation of the human spirit. The American ending offers the false hope of a final girl. The original ending confirms the terrifying truth. Sarah's descent was into madness, and from that darkness, there is no escape. Six, a universe of pain. In the heart of the crawler's lair lies a massive pit of bones.
Dead animals. Hundreds of them.
The grisly evidence of countless meals. It's a horrifying set piece, but hidden within the carnage is a small detail that reframes the entire film. It's an Easter egg, but not a fun one. It's a grim signature from the director, connecting his films into a shared universe of inescapable pain. Look closely. Among the human remains, there is a wolf skull. This isn't a random prop. It is a direct reference to Neil Marshall's first film, the 2002 cult classic. Dog Soldiers, a brutal siege movie about soldiers fighting for their lives against a pack of werewolves. This small detail suggests that the events of both films take place in the same world. A world where humanity is perpetually hunted, a world where violent, monstrous predators are not an anomaly but a fundamental truth. The skull isn't just a nod to fans, it's a tombstone. It implies that the horror is not contained to this one cave in the Appalachian Mountains. It is everywhere. Whether you are a soldier in the Scottish Highlands or a caver deep beneath the earth, the outcome is the same. The specific monster doesn't matter. In Neil Marshall's universe, you are the prey, and the world is a slaughterhouse. 5. Designing a nightmare, the uncanny valley. How do you create a truly terrifying movie monster? The conventional wisdom is to make it alien, otherworldly, something utterly unlike us. The creators of The Descent took the opposite approach, and the reason why is deeply unsettling. The initial designs for the crawlers were more creature-like, with huge black alien eyes. But during screen tests, the director felt something was missing. The creatures weren't scary enough. The instruction given to makeup effects artist Paul Hyatt was to add a hint of Nosferatu, a touch of vampiric evil, but to ground it in biology. The crucial decision was to make them more human. The eyes were shrunk down. The features were refined to look like a plausible, albeit grotesque, evolution of a human face. Marshall insisted on creating an entire society, males, females, and even children, to make them feel less like monsters and more like a real, thriving colony. The closer the design got to a human, the more terrifying it became.
Creatures have these fantastic ears, which have been created, which is how they survive.
The philosophy behind this choice reveals the film's dark heart. When asked why he made them so human, Neil Marshall gave a simple, chilling answer. I didn't want to make them aliens because humans are the scariest things. The crawlers are not horrifying because they are different from us. They are horrifying because they are us, stripped of all compassion and civilization, reduced to a primal, violent will to survive. They are a reflection of the monster that lurks within humanity itself.
In order to apply the makeup and the veins and the prosthetics, we've all had to shave every part of our bodies, which is rather embarrassing.
Oh, not at this time.
The price of realism, just go for it. The raw, kinetic violence of The Descent feels painfully real. That's because in many cases it was. The production valued a chaotic, visceral authenticity over the carefully choreographed safety of a typical Hollywood set, and the cast paid the price in real physical punishment. The opening whitewater rafting sequence, for instance, was performed entirely by the actresses themselves, with no stunt doubles. They were thrown into a dangerous, real-world scenario from day one. This philosophy reached its peak during the grueling fight scenes. Actress Natalie Mendoza, who played the formidable Juno, revealed that due to a hectic schedule, there was little time to rehearse her violent struggle with a crawler. The direction she received was simply to just go for it. She described the experience as harrowing, forced to wrestle a male actor with a level of rage she had never felt before. The on-screen battle was not a dance. It was a genuine physical struggle. The results were not fake movie injuries. Mendoza was left with lots of bruises and burns, her arms so raw from fighting on the sand-covered set that they looked like they had third-degree burns. The brutality you see on screen is not just an act. It is the documented result of an actor being pushed to the edge where the line between performance and a real fight becomes terrifyingly blurred.
Fighting them is a whole nother thing. It was actually really difficult because I was fighting a man. You know, I was like actually wrestling a guy, and that was hard work.
Action.
3. A phobia turned into a performance. This is arguably the most unbearable scene in The Descent. The moment Sarah becomes trapped in a passage so narrow she can barely breathe. For the audience, it's a masterclass in claustrophobic horror. For the actress playing Sarah, Shauna McDonald, it was something far worse. It was real. McDonald suffers from genuine, severe claustrophobia. Director Neil Marshall was aware of his lead actress's phobia, yet he placed her in a situation designed to trigger it, admitting later that the scene wasn't particularly pleasant for her. The terror you see etched on her face is not entirely a performance. It is the authentic reaction of a person confronting their deepest fear. This psychological ordeal was compounded by the miserable physical conditions of the shoot. The cave sets, built in an unheated UK studio during the dead of winter, were kept constantly cold and wet. While the crew bundled up in thick coats, the all-female cast spent days on end shivering in freezing water. Shauna McDonald also spent an entire day submerged in the lukewarm, slimy pool of stage blood. This wasn't just method acting. It was the deliberate leveraging of an actor's real psychological trauma and physical misery to capture a more authentic horror for the screen. 2. The ambush. Capturing genuine terror. For nearly an hour, the greatest threat in The Descent is the cave itself. The audience, like the characters, knows something else is down there, but the anticipation is agonizing. That tension felt by the viewer was mirrored by the actresses on set, who were the subjects of a calculated psychological experiment by their director. Neil Marshall made a crucial, manipulative decision. He absolutely forbade the 6 lead actresses from seeing the actors in their full crawler makeup until the exact moment they filmed their first encounter. They knew a monster was coming. They just had no idea what it would look like. On the day of the shoot, the anxiety was palpable. The director sat them down and gave them their instructions, building the suspense. Then they rolled camera. The screams you hear in the film are real.
Blossom from this meeting. I can't imagine. It's like your worst blind date ever, isn't it?
The shock, the panic, it is all genuine. Actress Saskia Mulder recalled the moment. The moment we saw one, we were all at the other end of the studio within seconds because it was just so scary. Natalie Mendoza was even more blunt, confessing she nearly wet her pants and was never really comfortable with them for the rest of the shoot. The first appearance of the crawler is not a scene of actors pretending to be scared. It is a piece of documentary footage, capturing the authentic terror of 6 women being ambushed by a living nightmare, orchestrated by their own director.
They were getting really nervous about meeting the crawlers for the first time. They didn't know what to expect. They hadn't seen any pictures, they had no idea what they were going to look like.
1. The Real Descent, The Tomb of John Jones. We have counted down the horrors of filmmaking, the pain, the fear, the manipulation. But the most terrifying fact connected to The Descent is not about the movie at all. It's a true story that proves the film's ultimate horror, being swallowed by the earth with no hope of escape, is not a fantasy. On November 24th, 2009, a 26-year-old medical student and father named John Edward Jones went exploring in Utah's Nutty Putty Cave with his family. Searching for a famously tight passage known as the Birth Canal, John made a fatal error. He entered an unmapped tunnel and found himself in a dead end. He tried to turn around but slid down into a vertical fissure, becoming wedged headfirst upside down, 100 feet below the surface. The space was just 10 inches wide and 18 inches high, smaller than the opening of a washing machine. For the next 27 hours, a massive rescue operation unfolded. Rescuers could talk to him, but the crevice was too tight to use any meaningful equipment. Being inverted was putting unimaginable strain on his body, as gravity forced blood into his head and crushed his organs. In a moment of devastating hope, they managed to rig a complex rope and pulley system and began to pull him out. They lifted him several feet, but one of the anchors, drilled into the soft, clay-like rock suddenly failed. The system collapsed and John slid back down, deeper and more tightly wedged than ever before. It was the point of no return. Shortly before midnight on November 25th, after 27 agonizing hours, John Jones's heart gave out. The final horror came after his death. Rescuers determined that it was simply too dangerous to try and retrieve his body. In an agreement with his grieving family, authorities made a heartbreaking decision. They brought in explosives to collapse the tunnel around him and then sealed the entrance of the Nutty Putty Cave forever with concrete. The cave is no longer a place of adventure, it is a tomb. John Jones's body remains there to this day, a permanent and tragic testament to the fact that the most profound horror doesn't need monsters. It just needs darkness, pressure, and a hole in the ground from which there is no escape. The power of The Descent is not just in what it shows us, but in what it reflects. It reflects the real pain of its cast, the psychological toll of its creation, and the unbearable truth of tragedies like the one at Nutty Putty Cave. It is a film that feels real because the suffering behind it, in so many ways, was. The crawlers may be fiction, but the darkness is not. The pressure is not. And for some, the descent is permanent. The film's greatest legacy is the chilling knowledge that the earth we stand on doesn't need monsters to be the most terrifying thing imaginable.